So I'll share my screen.
Catalyst 2030 is a movement of social entrepreneurs and innovators embracing collective action to achieve the SDGs by the deadline 2030. Our 1,500 members are active in 197 countries. By emphasizing collaborations, Catalyst 2030 is leveraging the power of the collective to accelerate real change in the lives of billions of people around the globe. What do our members say about Catalyst?
Catalyst 2030 is an invaluable global community of impact entrepreneurs.
Our relationship with Catalyst 2030 has really taught us the power of co-creation.
Join Catalyst 2030 and network, bond, and collaborate with our family members.
And I like the spirit of bringing change makers together to share and learn from each other.
Catalyst really understands the transformative nature of collaboration.
It's also a platform that can give us new tools and resources.
Catalyst 2030 has put my work on steroids.
But most importantly, to come up with solutions that are practical, ways where we can really make things happen, because social entrepreneurs are doers.
Are you a catalyst? Join us to achieve the SDGs.
Thank you so much, Madalena. So a fantastic connecting organization, and for those of you, because we've got people from a multitude of different spaces joining us today, and I suspect more will join over the course of the next hour and a half. But Madalena, I'm sure you will post into the chat just a little bit more about the Catalyst 2030 network. And for those of you who are interested in having a look and finding out a bit more, please do go to the links and see what is available there. So today's session really is an outbirth of an amazing conversation which we had a couple of weeks ago as part of one of our Africa Voices dialogue sessions. And we asked Prof. Folmink if he would be kind enough to work with us on really looking at a specific session on the concept of Ubuntu leadership. And so that's what we are doing today. And Prof. Folmink has been really kind enough. He's got an incredible network in this space, one of which is his remarkable son, Heinrich, and the other is Rui Markt, who works very closely with him. And so we have invited, or he has invited, them as thought leaders and conversants into this space together with us today. In amongst the group of those who are joining us, there are some other remarkable people. So Edward Stevenette from Learning Planet and the Ubuntu Circle, Karima Kadawi, who may be joining us later from the Tamaki Movement for Human Development, Carlos Ramirez from Club of Rome. There are just so many. Joyce Malombe from the Wellspring Philanthropic Foundation, who fund this kind of work. Remarkable personalities, human beings, and thought provocateurs on the concept of not only Ubuntu leadership, but really leading for a rehumanized society. And so just very briefly, an introduction to our main conversants for today. First and foremost, Prof. Jonathan Folmink, who is an incredible transformational educationalist, not only in the South African context, but in fact in the African continental, global context, who's held many roles both in the education space and in community development space. And I'm not going to go into all his accolades and his roles. He has many. I'm going to speak about my experience of John, which has been always that he has the spirit of a Mandela. He has this incredible presence and this incredible way of seeing the human in you and of evoking the desire to connect. A really humble, beautiful, remarkable man who brings us to a place of shared humanity. And then Rui is an incredible social entrepreneur who's worked in multiple different spaces. He's here primarily in his role as Ubuntu Leaders Academy Director. John, I'm going to ask you to perhaps just say a few additional words about Rui. And then Heinrich, who is in the health space. Heinrich is Prof. Folmink's son. So this kind of personality and presence is something that he has inherited both genetically and I'm sure from his entire lived experience in John's home. And Heinrich is an incredible thinker also on the topic of Ubuntu leadership and how it applies to our communal experience of the world. And so with that, very briefly, just a bit of sharing about Africa Voices Dialogue itself. So we've heard about Catalyst 2030, 2 or 3 slides. I'd like to invite my 2 colleagues, Andrew Wambua and Abdelaziz Zori, to wave their hands at you as incredibly powerful partners, wonderful partners in Africa Voices Dialogue, which is a dialogic space that we've been running for 2 years, really focused on being a space where Africa's voices are seen, heard, and loved. Aziz, I don't know if you quickly want to speak to our values, and Andrew, if you could speak to our purpose and our Nia, our mantra, what we believe in. So Aziz, over to you, and then Andrew, and then we're going to give over to you, Prof. Folmink.
Thank you, Robin. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you here for this dialogue that focuses on, and of course, it's a human philosophy. We have, as we have put in the title, it's Africa's gift to the world, but it's a human philosophy that is grounded in human values. And the values of Africa Voices Dialogue, of course, is part of those human values that we all seek to honor every day in us, so that we live in a world that honors human beings and where human beings honor every creature and every element of this universe. So in Africa Voices Dialogue, as we see in the slide, in everything we do,
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm sorry. Belonging, inclusiveness, and well-being are part of the values that we are seeking. Shared humanity with the recognition of our collective interdependence. We know how we are interconnected today, and we know how we are interdependent, and living together is about striving together to honor each other. Respect for each other and for freedom of thought and expression, co-creation, co-creating a world of peace, a world of collaboration, a world where all human beings feel this, this space of freedom, where they can voice their freedom, but at the same time act together towards achieving developments. Recognizing that every voice matters and every experience is relevant, and that learners and practitioners are at the heart of all we do. And excellence and responsibility are also part of our values. And the last one is a commitment to leadership, lifelong learning, and autonomy of thought. Andrew, to you to talk about purpose and mantra of Africa Voices Dialogue.
Thank you so much, Aziz. And as Aziz has said, we purpose to live up to the purpose of Africa Voices Dialogue, and we are there to co-create authentic belonging and activate potential for educators, learners, and communities across the African continent and beyond. And talking about beyond, I'm talking about the world. And then what are our principles as a community, as Africa Voices Dialogue community? We are less about expertise and more about experience. In Africa Voices Dialogue, every voice matters. Whether from a teacher, a practitioner, a researcher, or a policymaker. And the whole is more important than the sum of the parts. And we always seek meaningful learning. Robin?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, John, I would like to please hand over to you. What we are going to be doing is holding a conversant circle. So just inviting you, Rui, Heinrich, and a couple of those who are really excited about the topic in the audience to think through and talk about what Ubuntu leadership is, what it means to you, what you believe its role can be, should be, is in our attainment, our collective attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, how those two concepts interrelate. And then we will move into a more informal space with breakaway rooms for us all to connect with each other and talk through these concepts together, and then back into a reflective space together. So John, let me hand over to you. I'm going to stop sharing slides here and invite you to please
take up the baton. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robin, and thank you all. It's a great honor for me to participate in this wonderful conversation. I want to thank the leadership of both organizations, Abdulaziz and Andrew, Robin, and others that are here. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for providing me with an opportunity last time. I was with the dialogue to meet really wonderful people from across the continent and be inspired by people who are part of this network. I remember clearly my last interaction with the African Voices Dialogue and how the contribution of people like Joyce Malombi and others helped me think new thoughts, helped me think things that I would not have thought otherwise. So really, it's a wonderful opportunity, wonderful people. I see some are so close to me, Tanzania and others, Kenya in particular, wonderful. So we are reflecting today on Ubuntu leadership and its possible role in feeding into the global needs and social change and what it has to offer by way of a different narrative, which could help us make progress towards a global project, in particular, the SDGs. I have with me Rui Marx and Robin, you asked me just to say a couple more sentences. You know, I know somebody who was asked to do that. He just said, thank you. And they said, no, you can say a few more words. And then he said, thank you very much. So Rui is a remarkable person. He's the CEO of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy, as you had said. And I've been working with Rui since 2007. And he's an influencer and he's a world changer. I've been with him in different parts, including South Africa. And he and I often speak about the magic of Ubuntu, which he has lit the candle in Latin America, in Africa, in Europe, in Philippines, and so on. And he will speak. And then I've got my son, Heinrich, as you said, who has done amazing work related to Ubuntu, both his thesis academically, but in his practice as a medical doctor. And he will help us to understand some of the perspectives that an Ubuntu leaders should take into account when engaging with challenges, such as progress on the SDGs. So I'm going to say just a few things. Firstly, about leadership. And, you know, it's just my view. It's not a theory. It's just, and then I want to talk a little bit about Ubuntu. And I want to end off with what I believe is some very important advice and insights from one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela. So I'll end off with that. Firstly, I want to say leaders in general and Ubuntu leaders in particular understand that they are not in the world simply to adapt to the world, but to act on that world and to change it for the better. So that's mine. It's a very important belief. That one I really deeply believe. And in this way, we as human beings are different to other forms of life. I know a plant, and I love gardening, but the plant will just simply adapt to the environment, and the tree will do the same. Yet ironically, when we come into the world, as now we see ourselves as leaders, as change makers, yet when we come into the world, we come with an organismic unpreparedness to deal with the world. I noticed I've got some chickens come out of the egg, they immediately adapt to the world. But human beings cannot do that. That organismic unpreparedness to deal with the world makes us as human beings dependent on others, on other human beings. And we depend on others for nurturing and for care and for support and for education, and that's a reality. And this reality provides us with an appreciation for the basic fundamental values underpinning Ubuntu and the philosophy of Ubuntu, which two things for me, interconnectedness and interdependence. Ubuntu leaders bring into community. We talk about interconnectedness. Ubuntu leaders will bring into community people who are disconnected and alienated from each other. And we know that we live in a world where we have allowed many issues to divide us. Ideology, culture, religion, gender, race and class, and even our responses to COVID-19, as ridiculous as that may be. So today, there's a clarion call. And that clarion call is for bridge builders and for people who create relationships, people who create communities. And those communities are both nationally, but also regionally, and in fact, also globally. This is a global community. And I thank the leaders of this group that you've put this new bridge builders. So that is the clarion call. Bridge builders bring into community people who are disconnected and alienated from each other. And they forge ties that cut across borders, cuts across cultures, cuts across religion, because bridge builders and bridge building is rooted in the fundamental values, as I said earlier, two things, interconnectedness and interdependency. So, Ubuntu leadership is born out of the belief that we need a new global ethic. We cannot continue like this. It is totally unsustainable. And that global ethic that we as a group need to help build is a global ethic of care. And if we are going to make progress in building a kinder and a gentler world, a world that will make progress towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, we need a global ethic of care. And if I say the SDGs, we know that we have made progress when we work towards a world where there is less poverty. In fact, preferably no poverty in the end. Hunger, where hunger has been reduced or disappeared, where most and all people feel entitled to good health and well-being for all, and where there is quality education, and importantly, where women and girls take control of their own bodies, because we deeply respect the importance of gender equality. And one other sustainable development goals I would like to mention, because I live in South Africa, and although I'm in Cape Town, not in KwaZulu-Natal, we've had terrible floods recently. Over almost 500 people died, but thousands are without water. And therefore, for us, when we say the Sustainable Development Goal 6 talks about clean water and sanitation, what is my role in achieving that? So bridge building is highly dependent on leadership. But there's a kind of leadership that Rui will probably talk about, and that is servant leadership. So let me say something about leadership in a complex and uncertain world. The future we know that we live in is unstable. It's dangerous. It's unknown. And leaders, even in these circumstances, help people to be more confident to face the future and to live into the possibilities. So I pointed out earlier that we are dependent on others from the moment we come into the world. In other words, I believe, if I put it differently, you cannot be human alone. You cannot be human alone. You need, in fact, that's what Ubuntu means. A person is a person by virtue of other persons. But the remarkable thing is that as human beings, we have the ability, again, as leaders, to change our world. In other words, there is no ready-made world into which we are born. We can participate in creating a better world and give meaning to it. And in fact, Ubuntu helps us to understand that that's a moral purpose of why we are here. So I just want to mention, as I sum up, that leadership is not only about the now, but it is essentially about the future. Leaders do not only cope with change, they help others cope with change, and they make things happen into the future. And I always look at some people and I say it's very sad when we lose our sense of humanity and neglect our capacity to make a difference in this world. Agency is the word that I'm looking for. Agency is the capacity and the propensity to take purposeful initiative, the opposite of helplessness. And people with high levels of agency do not respond passively to their circumstances. You respond with passion. You respond with energy. And I feel very sad when I see somebody has lost that and just say, well, it's nothing I can do. Someone has said, and I agree, that the tragedy in life is not that we die. We all die sometime. We will. But the tragedy is what dies within us while we are still alive. And making a difference can be very challenging and demanding and even painful at times. So many people opt out. But an Ubuntu leader understands that there are lots of things in life that are worth the pain. And being a leader is one of them. It's worth the pain. I just want to say, I want to leave with you a quote from Mandela. Before I do that, I just want to say that the attributes for me of an Ubuntu leader by way of summary is firstly, respect and dignity. Valuing the worth of others and showing deference to others' potential to also make a contribution. And that is really based on the individual's connectedness to others. Secondly, so respect and dignity. Secondly, compassion. Compassion involves understanding others' dilemmas and seeking to help on account of the deep conviction of the interconnectedness of people. So we come back to interconnectedness and interdependency all the time. Number 3, solidarity. And it's particularly pertinent to the Sustainable Development Goals. Solidarity entails valuing collectivism according to a community-based understanding of self. And we have to find each other in community. And lastly, survival. You know, it's a central idea. How do we survive? And to survive presupposes the sharing of resources. No bravado. I cannot try and survive by myself. I cannot be human alone. So in conclusion, Rui Marx will speak next about the Ubuntu Leaders Academy, and he will explain that it is a project to train young people with high leadership potential, with particular attention given to those from vulnerable contexts, and that it was inspired, really, the whole thinking of Ubuntu by the vision of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu had visited the Ubuntu Leaders Academy in Lisbon and was very happy with it. And the project is still running, and it has particular elements that Rui will speak to. And it's a methodology that's available in several languages. We even had gibberish this morning in one of the slides. So it's also available in gibberish. But I let Rui speak to that. But I just want to say, before I leave with you a quote from Mandela, that my interaction with Rui has changed my life. It's changed my life as an educator, amongst many other things, not just as a human being. It made me helped me to understand that it is important for my own students to acquire not only the skills, but also the values that will allow them to travel through life with a richer perspective from which to view the world and to act on the world. And it's based in part on a worldview that sees the earth and all life upon it, including all human life, as essentially sacred. And this reverence for life will help us to appreciate the Sustainable Development Goals. It's really got to do with respect for life, all life, and to become kinder and gentler. And I should help my students to seek to understand the world, the natural world, with a sense of awe and reverence, not to dominate, control, and destroy the world. And that's at the heart of the SDGs. So I look at the world and I don't even want to watch the news sometimes, because we seem to live in a world that sees success and achievement and value only those things that will give you wealth and possessions, and that includes, but we should change our understanding that although those things are not unimportant, there are other values of life, such as generosity and respect and beauty and joy and love, compassion, personal wholeness, and which cannot be measured in any quantifiable standard, but must be honored and celebrated nonetheless. I close with the words of Nelson Mandela. All big ideas, he says, are simple. Ubuntu is a simple big idea. It asserts that the common ground of our humanity is greater and more enduring than the differences that divide us. It is so, and it must be so, because we share the same fateful human condition. We are creatures of the same blood and bone, idealism and suffering. And though we differ across cultures and faith, and though history has divided us, rich from poor, free from unfree, powerful from powerless, and race, we are still branches on the same tree of humanity. Thank you very much. All the best. I'll hand over to Louis Marx.
Hi, hello, dear Professor John Folmink. Thank you so much for your inspiration. All times we had the chance to learn with you about the Ubuntu philosophy. It was always a great moment. I'd like to thanks to Robin for this very kind invitation. No friends from Africa Voices Dialogue and Catalyst 2030. It is a great pleasure to be here in this meeting about Ubuntu leadership, and also with Irish, very warm hug to Irish too, in this session. It's very clear why Ubuntu is a gift for humanity. And as in Portugal, greetings from Lisbon, I'm based in Lisbon, we had the chance to learn from Ubuntu and try to understand how we can make this, from this philosophy, a very important tool in non-formal education to work with young people around this idea of Ubuntu. Of course, we started with this idea, I am because you are, I can only be a person to other people, but also this becoming a person, this idea also inspired by Ubuntu. We started 10 years ago with the Professor Folmink inspiration. I had the opportunity to meet Professor Folmink here in Lisbon many years ago, and it was for me the first time I understand the power of the concept of Ubuntu. And after that, we started to build a methodology of non-formal education. And we have three main axes in this work. This idea, ethics of care. Working Ubuntu leadership means ethics of care. Care looking after me, after the others in the community and the planet. The three dimensions of ethics of care are one of the main dimensions of the Ubuntu leadership in our work. But the second is also the servant leadership, how we can look the leaders as a servant, as members of the community, of course, but with this focus on the service. And the third is the idea of building bridges. And I think it's important to stress this idea because in our world, not only now we see this very dramatical crisis in Europe with the Ukrainian war, but also in different realities, we saw how deep are the divisions and also the walls between us. And we believe the Ubuntu leadership means become a bridge builder and try to work around this idea of human dignity, but also the principles of solidarity, true reconciliation, and of course, justice. And these three main axes, ethics of care, servant leadership, and building bridges, are the most important pillars in our work. But we started, this is perhaps the most important topic to share with you, to organize all these ideas around a methodological program to work with young people. And in the last years, we grow very in a perceived way, because our Ministry of Education in Portugal give a very huge support to this idea. And now we work with this program, Ubuntu Leaders Academy, in the Portuguese schools, working with young people to empower them to become Ubuntu leaders. And this means also work in the 5 dimensions: social emotional skills, and also relational skills like self-knowledge, self-confidence, resilience, empathy, and service are the 5 dimensions we work with these Ubuntu methods. And it means the Ubuntu leader needs to know better than him or herself, trust also in own capacities, be resilient, and of course be empathic and be focused on the service. And with these 5 pillars around the 3 main ideas: ethics of care, servant leadership, and bridge builders, or building bridges, we developed Ubuntu Weeks in the schools. This means a program Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, a full day. This is an immersion program for groups of 25 students, with teachers and psychologists and social workers from the school, training in this methodology. And the first seminar on Monday is about leading like Mandela. Mandela always as an inspiration as Ubuntu leaders. The second is building bridges. The third, overcoming obstacles. And the 4, Ubuntu lives. And the last one, I have a dream, not only inspired by Martin Luther King, but also about the 4th and 5th seminar are very important to focus on this idea. I am the master of my fate from the department Invictus, and so important from this poem to Mandela vision. We need to be responsible and be free to decide our future. And I have a dream means the Ubuntu leaders' engagement, commitment in the better society. And all in this work today in Portugal, and focus our experience in Portugal, we have presence in 370 schools, elementary, basic, and secondary schools. We work also with some universities, but our focus are on the secondary level. 15,000 participants, 2,000 trainers, and also we started to share this methodology with other countries. This is why Professor Folmink tell us about have these materials, all these methods in different languages, and we share for free with other institutions in different countries in Latin America, in Africa, Europe, and Asia. But we have also a very clear impact from our work when we make the assessment, the impact of the experience to be part of the Ubuntu Weeks and the Ubuntu program. We can see in different topics increase and a very important impact between the beginning at green line and the end of orange line in different topics. And this is the results, the average, the answers from the Ubuntu Weeks in different institutions in Portugal. And this is why with this project, we learn so much in the last years, but of course we need to improve and to be better, to do better our work. But I like to in my short intervention around the idea of hope. the feedback from the schools, from the teachers, from the psychologists, from all the community was amazing. And the people tell us how powerful, how great is the impact, or was the impact of making the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. This is why I like to thanks again this gift from Africa. The world needs Ubuntu. You can see in my screen, and these gifts from Africa for all the world are really very important nowadays, and we need to spread, to share with others all the power of Ubuntu ethics and the Ubuntu philosophy. And thank you so much.
Thank you. So Heinrich will be the last input, make the last inputs.
Okay. Thank you very much. Colleagues, thank you to Robin and to the leadership at Africa Voices Dialogue and Catalyst 2030 for the excellent work that you're doing and for giving us this opportunity to share today. Colleagues, I just want to confirm that you can see my screen. Perfect.
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Thank you. So mine is really just to cast perhaps a bit of an empirical lens on our discussions today, and specifically look at the notion of the Sustainable Development Goals and the application of the principles of Ubuntu to that. And what I'd like to use as a sort of conceptual framework is the work that I did quite a while ago now at the University of Warwick back in 2010. And of course, a lot's happened between now and then, including the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. But I did my master's dissertation then on the topic of Ubuntu, and specifically Ubuntu from Concept to Practice was the title, Gleaning Lessons for Global Citizenship and Governance. And it was a qualitative study that involved semi-structured interviews with 12 participants, quite in-depth interviews representing civil society, or rather the civil service, politics, academia, and the NGO sector. And the narrative that emerged from our analysis was the view of Ubuntu as a cultural value system, which informs both collective and individual identity and action. And so the key points there are that it is not exclusively the collective or exclusively the individual, but it's a combination of both. In fact, personhood encompasses both dimensions. And then critically, looking at those two components of identity formation and processes of action as common themes throughout. And on the basis of the analysis of the results, I constructed a global governance citizenship framework of analysis, which I'd like to take you through now. So if you look at the axes of the framework of analysis that emerged from the study, the one axis looks at the identity formation component that I mentioned, specifically global citizenship formation. And on the one hand, if you look at the line that goes across the box, the low end of the spectrum is a low expression of Ubuntu, right? And that's when you have narrow particularism, which is antithetical to many of the principles of Ubuntu, where my group, my individual and atomized collective should have greater rights than the others. And that's obviously very low Ubuntu. And then on the other hand, we have a broad inclusive humanism, which more accurately expresses Ubuntu, where there's an inclusive identity of the human family. And as we go up that spectrum, we get closer and closer to Ubuntu in terms of global governance, global citizenship formation. And then the second component, which looks at action, we then use the global governance space to represent that. And again, on the low end of that spectrum are narrow interest agreements, where the decisions are made to enhance an individual or a small group. And as we go up, the decisions are then shifting towards a consensus building objective, which again more clearly or accurately or closely reflects Ubuntu in terms of the global governance dimension. So if you take those two axes and we create we actually construct the framework of analysis, what we then see is that we have 4 quadrants that of course emerge. And I'm going to go through each quadrant in turn. But Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 4 are mirror images, as are Quadrant 2 and Quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 being a worst case scenario, and Quadrant 2 being an Ubuntu or idealized scenario. So let's unpack that. Let's unpack that. So Quadrant 1 is when we have higher levels of citizenship formation, identity formation that kind of reflects Ubuntu, but low levels of consensus building. So here we have a broad understanding of global citizenship, but limited commitment to consensus building. And a good example of this are the protests, the violent protests that sometimes break out around big international meetings, where there's a strong sense of global solidarity, of citizenship, but there isn't an interest really in consensus building, and the resort sometimes is to very destructive sort of interactions and violent interactions even sometimes. So that would be Quadrant 1, extreme example. Quadrant 4 is when you have the opposite. You have a desire to reach some level of consensus, but a narrow conceptualization of collective identity. And we see this play out, for example, in big climate summits, where there's a genuine desire to reach some kind of consensus, but because people are broken up into and fragmented into polarized communities, it's almost impossible to reach that. And sometimes those decisions really flounder. Quadrant 3, as I said, is a worst case scenario. So this is when you have a combination of both narrow interest and a very restrictive conceptualization of collective identity. And here we have the examples of the North Korean regime, the isolationism of Burmese junta, where we really have the opposite of Ubuntu. And then finally, Quadrant 2, which is the ideal scenario, right, where we have a broad and inclusive humanism combined with an authentic desire to build consensus across a range of interests. And this pushes outcomes towards positive objectives. The formation of the MDGs, the precursor, of course, the SDGs or the predecessor to the SDGs, would be a good example of Quadrant 2 in action. And this is most reflective of Ubuntu. So finally then, how do we bring this all together and focus specifically on the Sustainable Development Goals? Well, I propose that Quadrant 2, of course, is where we should start. And we may find utility there in terms of SDG implementation. And a way in which we could do that would be to undertake an exercise of placing each of the SDGs into that framework of analysis, and then seeing how the implementation can be enhanced. So let's take SDG 3, good health and well-being. One way of approaching this would be to ask two questions. The first is, can we detail the implementation of each of the SDG 3 targets, of which there are 13, and slide those targets along the global citizenship and governance axes towards Quadrant 2, using as our framing definition of health, the WHO definition of health being a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease, guiding us moving towards Quadrant 2. And then the second question, once we've done that more conceptual exercise, is to become quite practical and map out an integrated pathway of implementation, again, using those drivers of a broad humanism and a broad consensus building approach, and see how we can integrate this horizontally across all the actors involved. So health agencies in the public sector, health organizations in the private sector, health-related civil society actors, as well as vertically. And by vertically, I mean from the global all the way down to the local, understanding this as a single system that has these different components. So moving from global, regional, country level, province and state, local, and then back up to global, and trace the implementation across all of those spheres. And that, I would argue, would be a good expression of the SDG within the Quadrant 2 of the Ubuntu framework. So colleagues, I wanted to share this today, hopefully to spur on some discussion around how we can see the Ubuntu framework as being of great value to the realizable implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Heinrich. I think I should hand back to Robin to guide us. I noticed that there are some questions on the chat, but Robin, Abdulaziz, Andrew, it's over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Aziz. You were going to say?
No, it's okay. You go on.
So I must say that was really powerful, because I think the three of you collectively really led us on a journey from this highly evocative, intellectual, emotional sort of space of longing through to the practice, so the aspirational to the implementable, which was just fantastic. Some amazing comments and questions coming through on the chat. I would like to, rather than reading out questions from the chat, really like to invite some reflection from a few of from those of you in the room who would like to reflect back on what you've heard. I'm going to select out one or two who I know have to drop off in a second and whose voices I think would be so valuable to hear. So perhaps, Joyce, if we could just hear a reflection from you. Edward, I know your signal is not great, but if you are able to or would like to, just a reflection from you. And then I see there's a hand up, so pop your hands up if you've got something that you would like to reflect on from this conversation. We'll have about 10 minutes in this space, and then we'll have an opportunity to break away into smaller rooms to really allow for everybody to reflect in a smaller group on what's emerged for you and what has been evoked. So I can't see exactly whose hands they are. Let me invite you in, Joyce, while I look for the two hands that are up, three hands that are up. Joyce, just if you could give your sense of reflection.
I just want to start by thanking everybody for being here to hear what we have heard today. Professor, you just live forever. We love you. And the team that has come from the academy. This is what we need now. We cannot talk about this stuff anymore. And you have articulated in a way I would never even be able to articulate it. And I think this is where we need to join our hands to really have the transformation that we ourselves need and the other people need. Because now we are on a trajectory that only talks about me, myself, and I, and how do I do what I do, and I know it, I know best. But we realize that we are completely connected. To be alive, we must be connected together, and we are dependent on each other. And I don't want to add or to water down what has been so powerfully spoken, but I hope we are listening with our ears properly open, because we are in a crisis. And that crisis will not be resolved until we change our minds exactly how we approach the issues that we are dealing with. And I also strongly feel that this kind of leadership will, instead of looking outward, will start with the inward. And once we are changed and we have the right motivation, and then we can be able to connect with our people. We can't be bridge connectors when we ourselves are not part of the bridge. And so I think a lot has been said, a lot has happened, and where we are now, we can't turn back, but we also cannot move forward until we bring this whole concept into realization and commitment to pay the price to transform Africa. Thank you for giving me a chance to say something. I'm sorry I have to run to another meeting, but it has been a privilege to be able to listen to your great presentations, and look forward to connecting. We must do this. We can't wait. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joyce. Ethelhoog, or I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. So Ethelhoog. Thank you. You're muted. Just unmute.
Thank you. I'm from the Club of Rome, a colleague of Mamfella Rempella and John Gilmore's. And we've been working on a part of what I think is Ubuntu, which is the interrelatedness going toward well-being, which one of the speakers mentioned. And we have given our lives over to searching for financial goals. And this is completely disrupting what could be harmony. And what we need to do is pivot and move toward well-being, which Ubuntu so clearly by the last three speakers gives you wonderful routes to follow into this. But I think that in Africa, there was such connectedness between the indigenous peoples in tribes and the environment. And this, from colonialism and other forces, has been disrupted vastly. And I think that part of the conversation of the last three speakers is a very important part that should be thought of equally important as the social parts and the governance parts, the relationship between the various groups occupying various spaces around Africa and their support system, which gives them oxygen, food, water, and many other things. And thank you for all three speakers who gave a great richness about Ubuntu. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So before I hand over to you briefly, Andre, and then Chakri for a quick comment, just really something that came up in the chat, which I think is really important to consider, because we often find this, we'll have a talk on servant leadership, or we'll have a discussion on collective leadership or Ubuntu. And what so often happens is we seem to try and distinguish them. And there are differences, but perhaps, to really step into the practice of these concepts and philosophies is to step into willingness to integrate and to look for where do the common roots and threads lie, and how do we see the expressions of our faith in humanity and humanity's fundamental need to interconnect, rather than kind of falling into that, how do we divide these things out? Really holding that balance between integration and understanding. So thank you. Let me ask Andre, would you like to make a quick comment, a question, etc.? And then Chakri, and then we're going to have some time for us each to be in a smaller space together and in conversation with each other. Andre.
Good afternoon, Robin. Thank you for putting this one on my radar via LinkedIn. I'm glad I made the time to join in. Prof. John Folmink, I follow you, sir. I look up to grow up to be like you one day. Heinrich, thanks for the very thought-provoking idea around how we look at the categorization of how we might behave in order to be able to make the SDGs a reality. But here's a comment and then followed by a question to Heinrich and John. Eksugi Folmink's idea. I'm Zulu. I'm 50% Zulu. I was raised in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm a child of Africa. And Zulu is, if you understand the true meaning of the word, talks about people of the heavens. That's the original translation of Zulu. And Ubuntu was, well, quite frankly, our conditioning. It was what you had to conform to. It was our culture. But unfortunately, in my short lifetime of nearly 50 odd years, I've noted that even as a people, as a Zulu nation, and even African tribes, that self-service and service of others are two opposites of a continuum. And where we come from initially as the continuum of service of others, it's now swung to the other side of the continuum, service of self, with very little regard for servicing others. So, this Ubuntu leadership thing has been something I've been trying to solve as a physicist for many years now, because I love the physics of it, John, I keep chasing you. I keep saying that. But here's my question. If we understand the 5 stages of society being conformity, followed by conditioning, culture, communities, and civilization. And here's the question to you now, Heinrich. How do we swing the service of self back to service of others and make conforming, conditioning, culture, and civilization rooted in that energy? Because what I've noted in my short life as a Zulu, we no longer care about others. We only seek to serve self. I hope my question is clear.
Thank you, Andre. So I think if you guys park that for a little while, and then we come back and we think about that as we close, and we reflect on what's a really important pivot point, and it's almost a directionality. What is the direction in which we are traveling, and how do we shift the direction in which we move? What are the stories we collectively tell ourselves that build our culture and that ultimately build our civilization? Chakri, I'm gonna ask you to bring your voice, and then we'll move into some smaller states.
Andre, I don't think there's anybody in the world who is not a child of Africa. I think the birth of the human civilization began in Africa, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. I mean, basking in two spaces, one from the women community leaders in Uganda, and the other from the Tamkeen space in Morocco from our dear sister Karima Kadoy. I think Andre's question is worth a conversation for sure. My challenge is very similar, and it's essentially that can Ubuntu in the language of Tamkeen shine the light for all the spaces in the world to transform itself to one civilization. I don't think there is in South Africa or India. It doesn't make a difference at all. And I am convinced that until we all behave as one, and when I mean one, it's not just the human beings, but the environment, the ecology. I think it's only then we will be able to build ourselves out of the existential crises of climate change or the wars and all of that, and into the freedom that Martin Luther King talked about, and many of the speeches that I've heard our dear brother Nelson Mandela speak about. And I'm so glad to be here. It's all of this is coming up. I mean, I just had one of my senior colleagues from the East Side Institute here as well, and Chris Helm. We speak about this all the time, and I think I'm just looking forward for all the conversations with Rui and Hendrik, and I already started talking with John. So I'm privileged to be here. Thank you, Robin, Aziz, and Andrew. God bless the world, and God bless us all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chakri. So what we're going to do now, because voice is important, and when you have we now have 50, we had 77 at some point, but when you have 50 people in a room, it's really hard to hear each other's voices physically. And we really want to have an opportunity for every person to reflect together. So we'll be breaking out into breakaway rooms. Very, very simple. You can talk about what you want, really. So there's no guidelines on it. But really just to invite you to reflect together on what has resonated for you. So just pay attention to where in your body you felt moved, and articulate it. Find a way to articulate. What is it that resonates? Where is that chord that struck for you? What has moved you? What question are you left with? And I just want to clearly indicate that we have a commitment to try and not be overly controlling. So the rooms will be open for 10 minutes. There are 3 or 4 of you in each room. We are not going to close the room and pull you out. It's horrible, that feeling. But the rooms are open for 10 minutes. We will inform you when we are coming back into the main session. If you need an extra 30 seconds, minute to conclude a thought, you don't need to feel like you're going to be dragged out. You have the time. Come back when you have completed. We'll tell you when we are back in the main room again, and we hope to see you back here. And otherwise, whatever is happening in the magic of your room, we fully support and we want it to happen. So stay there until the magic is complete. So we're off to our rooms. What's resonated for you? What's moved you? What have you heard? What do you feel, see, reflect upon? See you back in about 10 minutes or so. I'll stay here and help out anybody who needs a little hand. Here we go. Welcome back, Heinrich.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. You were with Chakri, I think. Yes, so here comes Chakri.
Yes, we had some great philosophical discussions.
Yeah, with Chakri you would have fantastic discussions. Oh,
I have a feeling Robin and Aziz and you guys make sure that I'm in space with. Last time it was with John. This time it was the Heinrich. So that I'm at my best.
you get like the prime pickings a Chakri has, all unintentional. It's the universal kind of pushing you together. Oh, wonderful. So you will wait. I think everybody, I'll just remind them that the room is closed.
So I was very privileged that it was a very intimate space with just me and Heinrich. So we went around the world. We talked about everything. That was just brilliant.
From DSM-5 to Eastern philosophy, it was fantastic.
And of course, the social therapeutics. And I didn't get to throw in Tamkeen, but I already put it in my comments. So, you know, and Robin's the trigger for me. She's the one pushing me here and pushing me there and pulling me into this and pulling me into that. I think, Robin, you need to apply for a citizenship for me for Africa. I think we need to have an African Union.
You're already an AU citizen. Very pushy I am.
Yeah, I know.
I think if you want to be one, I would be. If you want to be one, I will be able to facilitate that one for you, and I will offer you Australian passport.
Oh, lovely. No, I have a brother in Niger, Haruna. I think he will move the universe to make me a citizen of Niger too.
Okay.
So I'm thrilled to be. Like I said, you know, Africa is the birth of the human civilization.
I'm just going to help Tandy get out of her breakout room, and I'll be back here in a sec.
Okay, we'll hold the container for you, Robin. Promise not to break anything.
So which angle are you from? Are you from India?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm not able to see your name. If you can say your name, I would love to catch up with you again.
Myself?
Yes.
Myself?
Yes.
I'm Richmond.
I see somebody closed the breakout rooms. It wasn't me, but anyway, here we are coming back all into the main space.
Okay. Thank you, Richmond.
Thank you.
Aziz and Andrew, I'm going to look at you later as to who closed the breakout rooms.
Just we thought we in our room we thought that you have summed us all of us back to the main room. So that's why it was like because we had a message from you 2 minutes ago that we had only 1 minute left for the breakout.
No, awesome, fantastic. So welcome back, everybody. So good to see your faces again. Please do pop your videos on if you can. It's just great to see everybody. And yeah, let's just have some reflections on your conversations in your breakaway rooms and what has emerged for you and what would you like to talk about in our last few minutes together. So please, any thoughts and comments, If there's any blank space, then we have two key questions, Heinrich and Rui and John, for answering from both Chakri and Andre earlier on. Before we go there, would anybody like to share?
Robin?
Yes.
Robin, if you just don't mind, I would like to say a few things like as a probably a comment on what Andre said. Very interesting perspective from everyone who has spoken so far. But we would like to be, as humans, we would like to be very, very realistic as well. We know for sure that Ubuntu as a philosophy will never be embraced by all human beings. We have this hope. But the way I see it is that, okay, later, please. As I said, human beings will be like divided, generally speaking, into two groups on the two ends of a rope, pulling each other towards one philosophy. And the ones on the side of Ubuntu, now that everyone, including the others on the other side, are on one ship, and that if the ship wants to make it to survive, so the ones who know what it takes to save this ship will strive and will struggle to pull the others towards the Ubuntu philosophy between brackets. And if we don't do it, if we who have already understood at least the meaning for life, not just the pre-meaning, which is focused on ourselves, on our system. So if we don't try very, very hard to pull the others towards this Ubuntu philosophy that is striving for meaning for life, this will never happen. So we can wait for the others to understand. I mean, we ourselves were trying, as he said, we're trying to understand this because, well, some of us are still at the pre-meaning while others have already reached that meaning. So we look at Professor Folmink and the legacy that they have built with other people like Desmond Tutu or other people in the world, or Nelson Mandela or others. You can mention as many people as you can. But we are striving towards that understanding, but we need to do something about it right now. That's why it's about taking action.
Thank you, Aziz. Thank you. Did any of you have something that you heard in your rooms together that just makes you want to shine with joy? And please do share that with us.
Maybe to add on what Aziz has said, I was in a room with the Camerita and Liza from California, and something very strong insights came up as well, that in as much as we are growing the groups, in as much as we are growing a community, we should also be considerate to grow individuals. And the beauty with Ubuntu, the moment we come together, as we grow as a group, we're also growing as individuals because we are sharing expertise, we are sharing experiences, we are sharing knowledge, we are sharing skills. We are building a team. So the spirit of Ubuntu, once the spirit of Ubuntu brings us together, we grow as individuals and we grow as a group. So that is a very strong insight which came from our group.
Thank you, Andrew. Neil, I see your hand is up. Please pop your hands up if you've got something you'd like.
Our group was 3 people, and it was 3 school principals in 3 continents, Africa, Europe, and North America. And the very fact of being able to do that and talk with smiles on our faces was so completely remarkable. We actually found great similarities looking at the micro issues. It's how this works in the micro issues. But it was that actual communication and that we could actually do it in real time that brought the smile to my face. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Any last thoughts from those rooms and conversations?
Robin, this is Peggy here. Our group, we also 3, and I got to meet a second friend from Colombia. I already have a friend in Colombia. So that's the power of the network that we've just run. So for me, I'm only grateful for the network that I've just established, and also to meet Ndongolozi, who happens to be here in South Africa, but in Joburg, and I'm in Durban. So we've already established that relationship to say if she has activities around Durban, now she knows she has somebody to meet and to mentor right here in Durban. And this is right, you know, out of this world. I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Ah, fantastic, Mbeki. Isn't it amazing when we walk into a space with people from across the globe and then we find someone from our own country and you feel that that previously they would have felt so distant, and all of a sudden we have this sense of solidarity and communal identity, and just creates a possibility of doing things. Just we are really only limited by the ways we circumscribe our minds as to who it's possible to connect and work with.
And to add on that, Robin, the spirit of Ubuntu starts with building a relationship first. The moment we build a relationship, because we are still understanding each other, we are still understanding the context in which we are operating, we have a conversation. And as we continue to converse, as we continue to have a conversation, we start building trust. And the moment as we keep on building trust now, we now start having a deep dialogue. We create strong nodes, we create strong communities. And in such a way now, we start living as human beings. So it starts with a relationship, then a conversation, then the trust is built, then dialogue. And I mean, it's a beautiful concept.
I'm thrilled to be here with brothers and sisters, and Andre is a very dear brother to me, and now a new brother. I'm looking forward to my conversations with Heinrich. I can't just wait to get off this call and start doing that.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to ask Heinrich, you first, and then Rui, just to conclude, perhaps to give your feedback on those questions that came through a little earlier on, and then finally hand back to Prof. Folmink, just to leave us all feeling really loved, cared for, and deeply thoughtful. And then we'll play out with Umuntu, Gabuntu, Gabantu. And thank you all for being here. So Heinrich, over to you.
Sure. I'll thank you so much. This has been a very, very incredible experience, and I've been a privilege to engage. And Chakri, I feel the same. I can't wait for our next conversation. But I think, Andre, you asked a pertinent question, which I'll attempt to answer very briefly. You know, as a physician, you know, I'm trained in sort of an empirical mindset where it's all about data and statistics, and we have this dichotomy, don't we, between that and the kind of more philosophical. And I think it's important to collapse that in our search for truth. Is that we need everything to get there. And so my answer may be a bit more on the esoteric side, but please bear with me. I mean, I think the challenge is, you know, when I did my study on Ubuntu, what I found is that Ubuntu, of course, is just one manifestation of a vast common consciousness in humanity that's stretched across space and time. I mean, different cultures have different expressions of what we term Ubuntu. So it's in who we are as an essence, as humanity. And Aziz is right. There is this tug of war between an egoically dominated humanity, where it's about me, and I, and what I can get, and this higher level consciousness that Ubuntu kind of represents. But I think what we have going for us is that if we dig down into who we are authentically, it is very much in the latter. It's in that space of Ubuntu. You know, we've seen people in emergency situations when the ego recedes, they immediately will help somebody in distress. They won't even think twice about that. That's our natural orientation. And so I think part of our task is to articulate a vision for people of their authentic selves, help them remember who they truly are. And I think then we'll see a natural shift back towards an Ubuntu-dominated world. So that's my short input. Thank you.
My side, I wanted to say thank you for this beautiful moment. It was an inspiration for me. And we need to put all these ideas, all this inspiration on the field, answer to main challenges from our world in our days. We need to act and try to build a better world together. The world needs Ubuntu again. Thank you so much for this beautiful time together.
Oh. So thank you, everyone. As Rui would know, that any session on Ubuntu is for me, and certainly I know for Rui and Heinrich, a learning opportunity. I said that before. And so I learned new things today. I was in a group, in the breakout group with Andre, and that was a double blessing. And then we had Masayoshi from Japan, who teaches philosophy in the UK. And we had an interesting discussion about the two issues. One was Andre's issue of a disconnect of serving self and serving others. And I think that my quick response to that is that, yes, that happens in all of us. But on deep reflection, we learn to reprioritize. That as Ntu, as a person, I tend to put myself first. But Ubuntu reminds me that I'm not complete, that you complete me and I complete you. Therefore, if I diminish you in any way, I do it to myself. Whatever I do to you, I do to myself. And so it's a long discussion, but I just want to say thank you. And for Masayoshi was talking about interdependence. And there's an upside to that of support, but there's also a reality that we have to embrace, and that is, what about suffering? What does interdependence say about suffering? And I said in response that, yes, it's true. If you say you cannot be human alone, I'm also saying you cannot be happy alone. I don't think anybody's tried to really be happy alone, but I can't. And if you can't be happy alone, you shouldn't be in pain all by yourself. And I think that is the reciprocity. There were one question that I'd like to, in summary, close with, and that is, this is a country, South Africa, from which people like Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu, great leaders, had taken this gift of Ubuntu and showed it to the world. Yet there is strong evidence that we in this country, somebody did ask that question, are not practicing that. But we're no different to any other human being. That same phenomenon would occur in any country, not just in South Africa. And if you call it a gift to the world, yes, indeed, some of the people like Rui Marx has opened that gift and shared it to all the schools in Portugal. Some of us here have taken that gift. It's still under the Christmas tree. We haven't opened that gift. And we need to actually unpack that gift and see the value of what's inside there. I think that Ubuntu for me in South Africa and Africa as a whole is a deep narrative, a narrative of return to our humanity. And the reason why there is so much violence still on our continent or in the world, and so much pain, bullying, whatever the case may be, the root cause of all of that is that we become disconnected from our true humanity. If you get connected with your true humanity, and that is what Ubuntu is all about, in the spirit of Ubuntu, you will always understand that your pain is my pain, your success is my success, and that's how we will go together. So I thank you one and all for another learning opportunity. I will reflect on that. Thank you for all the questions. I wish we could have more time. The very last point with Masayoshi was saying that there's a difference in we mustn't assume that we all across the world work on the same worldview. The West and many other countries have a linear worldview. So you get the introduction, and you get a body of argument, and then you have the conclusion. And sometimes if you listen to somebody and there's no conclusion, you say that person didn't say anything. Whereas in Japan, you have a spherical worldview where the conclusion is always left to the listener, not to the speaker. And so Ubuntu is one of those. It is not a linear worldview. It is something that you need to decide on or reject. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you, Robin.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for joining us. It has been truly wonderful to be with you all today. I've popped into the chat if you'd like, if any of you are not on our Africa Voices Dialogue mailing list, there's a little link that you're welcome to join. We have these conversations once a month or so. Just beautiful spaces to connect. And in terms of that, here it is also on the slides. And I just need to make sure that I get my sound on, because this is always a challenge to make sure that we have sound for the next little bit of what we do. Where is my sound? Share sound. Fantastic. And now what we're going to do, for those of you who want to dance, you dance. For those of you who want to sing, you can sing, but probably mute yourself, and otherwise just listen into the beautiful coherence of everything that we've been speaking about in the form of music, which is such a wonderful expression always of how we converge together. So playing us out with a wonderful song expressing Ubuntu. Hola.
message we have for you. Love utando, love lirato, love is patient, love is kind. It is not rude, now saseki. Cannot be broken, it's as strong as that. Like a mighty flame, like a mighty flame, like a mighty flame, mighty flame, like a mighty flame. Like you say, we are.
Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome evening, and thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Great session, Robin. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, Aziz, Robin, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you, Susanna. You're
Bye,
muted.
everyone. I am muted.
Thanks,
This
Peter.
was wonderful. You have no idea how much I needed this today. So thank you so much. It reminded me where I was and how I need to go back. And I have a great idea using that link. And I think the school I'm at, we will get back to all working together as a community. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Professor John.
Thank you, Silvana.
Thank you very much, Aziz. And yes, I did see my friend Carlos from the Club of Rome. Hello, Carlos. This is the first time that we're together in one room, so thank you.
and thank you, John, for such a great work.
Andrew, you're great.
Yeah. Great. It's a philosophy, actually. And I like the way you have put it. I like the way you have put it. Is our decision either to accept it or to reject it.
Yes.
Now, as Joyce said,
thank you.
we need Professor John to live, forever. Yeah, we want to hear him every time. We want to just get some of that wisdom, so that we live on it. Thank you so much.
But my children tell me, Dad, you are so old. They discontinued your blood type. So
don't worry about what kids say. My daughter tells me, Daddy, in a few years you're going to die, and I'm going to be an adult. So this is the story she has about her being an adult. Okay.
Yeah.
When I tell her why, she said, just because my grandpa is no more here. So
don't take an early dismissal.
Yeah. But what I said about your legacy. So the legacy you've just shared with us. That's the peak of leadership. It's like the utmost level that we can reach. So we're striving together to reach that peak. Okay, together.
Kind of you. Thank you. It's a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.